You can't do this. I didn't mean to cheat. We can fix this. My wife screamed those hysterical words when she was served with divorce papers at her office, right in front of the man she was sleeping with. For months, she'd been living a lie, but in that moment, she still tried to call her affair a misunderstanding. The thick envelope was sitting on top of the usual pile of Monday morning clutter: credit card junk mail, supermarket flyers, and a renewal notice for a magazine we hadn't read in years. This one, however, carried a corporate logo in the corner and was addressed to my wife, Christina. I opened it while drinking my first cup of coffee, half expecting some kind of promotional fluff about a new car model. Important safety recall notice. The title screamed in bold red letters. I quickly scanned the details. Christina's 2023 Honda Accord, the one her employer leased for her as part of her executive compensation, had a mandatory manufacturer's recall on the passenger airbag system. The letter urged immediate attention and included a toll-free number to book an appointment. I glanced at the kitchen clock. 7:15 a.m. Christina had already left for an early breakfast with a client, a habit that had become alarmingly frequent recently. As an operations manager at our local manufacturing plant, I understood the pressure of a demanding job, but her schedule had become something almost maniacal. I pulled out my phone and dialed the local dealership. After navigating the automated prompts, a service advisor finally answered. On to service. This is Mike Palmer speaking. How can I help you today? Hello, Mike. I'm calling about a recall notice for a 2023 Accord. I read him the VIN number straight from the letter. Let me look that up for you, sir. I heard the familiar sound of a keyboard clattering in the background. Okay, I have the vehicle here, registered under your name, Daniel Foster. Actually, the car belongs to my wife, Christina Foster. More clicking, then a silence that lasted a fraction of a second too long. Mr. Foster, Mike said, his voice dropping into a cautious, lower tone. It seems this recall service has already been completed on this vehicle. Seriously? When was that? My wife didn't mention it to me. Another stretch of silence. Let me check the date. November 18th. That was about 3 weeks ago. Huh, I guess she forgot to mention it. I started to thank him and was about to hang up, but his slightly hesitant delivery made me pause. Was there a problem with the service? No, sir. Everything went fine. It's just that. He trailed off, leaving the sentence dangling awkwardly. Just what? Well, sir, I was the advisor who wrote up that appointment, and I remember it clearly because your wife came in with her husband that day. Or, at least, that's who I assumed the gentleman was. My coffee cup stopped moving toward my lips. Excuse me? What did you just say? The gentleman who was with her was listed as an alternate contact on the service order. I just assumed they were married. They seemed. Mike was clearly backtracking, deeply uncomfortable with the subject now. My heart began to accelerate. It was that distinct, gut-wrenching feeling when your body flags an emergency before your mind can process the facts. Something was fundamentally wrong. What did you say his name was? Hold on, let me bring up the full order. More frantic keyboard sounds. Robert Martinez is listed here as the alternate customer contact for future service notifications. I placed the coffee cup down on the counter, afraid I would drop it and shatter the glass. Can you tell me anything else about that visit? Mike hesitated, clearly struggling. Mr. Foster, I really think you should come in and review the service records yourself. I honestly can't discuss anything more over the phone. I feel like this is something you need to see in person. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed my keys and wallet, my mind racing through dates and possibilities. Christina had never mentioned taking the car in. November 18th. As I headed to the garage, I checked my work calendar on my phone. That was the day I had driven 3 hours to our regional facility for an all-day operational review. I'd been gone from 6 a.m. until almost 9 p.m. that night. The dealership was only 15 minutes from our house. I made the drive in 12 minutes. Mike Palmer was a clean-cut guy in his late 30s wearing the standard service uniform. He had the records printed and waiting on his desk, his apologetic expression confirming that he knew he'd dropped a bombshell into my life. Mr. Foster, let me be absolutely clear. I'm not trying to cause any trouble, but when you called asking about the recall, and I saw this in the system, he pushed the stack of papers across the desk toward me. The service order looked standard enough at first. Vehicle info, date, and time. November 18th, 2:30 p.m. airbag service was no charge due to the recall, but they had performed a $247 charge for an oil change and tire rotation that Christina had apparently added to the work order. Then my eyes landed on the customer signature line. Christina's familiar signature was there. Below that was a section I'd never noticed before: alternate contact information for service notifications and vehicle pickup authorization. Name, Robert Martinez, phone, email, and relationship to primary customer. The box was definitively checked. Spouse, partner. His signature, bold and confident, was written directly below Christina's. He paid for the additional services, Mike whispered, pointing to the payment section. Credit card on file, Robert Martinez. Visa ending in 4829. My hand started shaking violently. I had to put the papers back on the desk before I tore them to pieces. There's one more thing, Mike added, looking even more miserable. It's our standard procedure for alternate contacts who might be picking up vehicles. We make a photocopy of their driver's license for security protocol. He slid a final sheet over, a photocopy of a driver's license. Robert Martinez, 44 years old. An address on the north side of town, maybe 15 minutes from our suburb. The photo showed a man with dark hair graying slightly at the temples, a strong jawline, and an easy, practiced smile. He was my age, maybe a little more conventionally attractive, but not by much. Can I get copies of all this? My own voice sounded hollow and distant, totally mechanical to my own ears. I've already made them for you. Mike handed me a full folder. Mr. Foster, I truly am sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. This is standard procedure, right? Service records, alternate contacts, identity verification. Yes, sir. Then you were just doing your job. I stood up, clutching the folder tightly to my chest. Thank you for your time, Mike. I sat in my car in the dealership parking lot for 10 minutes, just staring at the paperwork. That analytical part of my brain, the operations manager that solved complex problems, suddenly took over. I needed to identify root causes, track patterns, and build an airtight documentation trail. This was the same methodical process I used at the plant when auditing a quality failure. I opened LinkedIn on my phone. Robert Martinez wasn't hard to find. His professional headshot matched the driver's license photo, the same confident smile, though he was wearing a sharp suit in the profile picture. Senior account executive at Strategic Solution Software Corporation, the exact company where Christina worked. His profile showed he'd transferred from the Denver office 8 months ago. Before that, he'd spent years at rival companies. His skills section emphasized relationship building and territory development. His recommendations were over the top. Robert brings energy and innovation to every client interaction. A natural leader who inspires his team. I quickly checked his network connections. Christina was listed among his 847 contacts. I switched to Facebook and found his profile. The privacy settings were tight, but his public bio read, "New chapter, new opportunities. Embracing change." His relationship status was simply single. I scrolled back through his public posts. 6 months ago, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the best outcomes. 5 months ago, starting over is not giving up. It is giving yourself a chance. 4 months ago, excited for new directions in both work and life. The pieces were starting to slot together with chilling precision. I found a local news website that archived public records. Divorce filings are public in our county. It took me 15 minutes, but there it was. Martinez, Roberta versus Martinez, Jennifer L. Filed 6 months ago, finalized 4 months ago. The disposition was a mutual dissolution with division of assets. The timeline was now complete in my head, laid out like a production plan. 8 months ago, Robert moves to the local office and starts working with Christina. 7 months ago, based on Christina's behavioral shift, things likely began. 6 months ago, Robert files for divorce. 4 months ago, his divorce is final. 3 weeks ago, Christina takes him to my local Honda dealership, lists him as her partner, and lets him pay for her car service while I'm 3 hours away at an all-day meeting. I drove home on autopilot, my mind processing the data like a machine analyzing a massive variance report. But beneath the cold, analytical surface, a colder, darker determination was taking root. The moment I got home, I went straight to my office and opened my laptop. The operations manager in me had taken total command. This wasn't a marriage problem anymore. This was a high-stakes investigation. I was going to treat it exactly as I would an audit of a critical supplier's quality records. I started with Christina's company directory, which I could still access because I'd helped set up her laptop a year ago and her credentials were saved. I checked the organizational chart. Robert Martinez reported to the same regional sales director as Christina. They were in the same department, an operational chain. Next, I opened Christina's calendar. She'd given me access years ago for family coordination and apparently never thought to revoke it. I scrolled back through the last 6 months. The pattern was immediate and glaring. Before Robert's arrival, Christina averaged maybe 1 overnight business trip a month. After he arrived, that number doubled, then tripled. In the last 2 months alone, she was going on overnight trips at least once or twice a week. But the travel was only part of the story. I cross-referenced her calendar with Robert's, whose entries I could partially view since they shared many events. Client meeting in Chicago, both names listed. Sales conference in Atlanta, both attending. Regional planning session in Minneapolis, both on the attendee list. I pulled up our joint credit card statement, the one we used for all household expenses. The charges painted their own vivid picture. Restaurants I'd never heard of, upscale places near her city office where she supposedly had worked dinners, charges at expensive hotel bars, wine purchases. Christina had always been extremely frugal with business expenses, preferring to keep things conservative. Now, the pattern was expensive, frequent, and indulgent. Then I checked our shared bank account. While her paychecks were still depositing normally, her personal spending had increased dramatically. More charges at high-end clothing stores, regular appointments at a luxury downtown salon she'd never mentioned to me, a $380 purchase from a jewelry boutique. She'd even bought a new membership at a premium gym. I leaned back in my chair, physically nauseated. The walls of my small office seemed to press in on me. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water that I didn't drink. My reflection in the window stared back, 42 years old, same age as Robert, with graying temples just like him. I forced myself to think clearly about the last 6 months of my marriage. accepting the truth instead of her flimsy excuses. The late nights at the office for a big project deadline. Honey, don't wait up for me. The multiplying weekend team meetings. You know how sales is. Her behavior with her phone had been the clearest warning sign I'd willfully ignored. A year ago, she'd leave it on the kitchen counter while showering or gardening. Now, it went everywhere with her. A new passcode she'd changed for security. Charging it in the bathroom overnight, not on her nightstand as she always had. The emotional distance was a gaping hole. We used to talk about our days. Now, her answers were distracted and monosyllabic. Our physical relationship had dwindled from our usual twice-weekly rhythm to maybe once a month. I'm just so tired from work, she would say. This client situation is stressing me out. Can we just cuddle tonight? I had swallowed every lie. I had accepted every excuse, telling myself that careers have intense seasons and that a 15-year marriage naturally cools. I had been a fool. I returned to my computer, determined to do this the right way. Documentation, evidence, irrefutable facts. I created a new folder on my hard drive, gave it an innocent-sounding label, Q4 Manufacturing Reports, and began organizing. I scanned every page of the dealership service records, the order with both signatures, the photocopy of Robert's license, the payment receipt with his card info. I screenshotted Robert's profiles and the divorce records. I documented Christina's travel calendar against Robert's. I printed the credit card statements with the suspicious charges highlighted. Finally, I created a timeline document, laying out the sequence chronologically. Month 1, Robert joins, first joint calendar entries appear. Month 2, Christina's travel schedule increases, expensive dinner charges appear. Month 3, Robert files for divorce. Christina starts luxury salon visits. Month 4, Robert's divorce is final. Christina's overnight trips double. Month 5, multiple joint travel events. Emotional distance widens. Month 7, current month dealership visit. Robert listed as alternate contact. It was nearly 6 p.m. Christina would be home soon. I saved everything, backed it up to a new, secure cloud account, and closed the laptop. I couldn't face her yet. I needed the strategy planned first. The saying at the plant echoed in my mind. Prepare the root cause analysis before presenting the corrective action. Christina walked in at 6:30, carrying her laptop bag and looking slightly worn. She had always been beautiful, reddish-brown hair, green eyes, a vibrant smile. Tonight, she looked perfectly polished, a look I now realized was new. Hey, she said, dropping her bag by the door. Sorry I'm late. The client call ran long. No problem. I was just about to start dinner. Actually, I already grabbed a salad at the office. She moved toward the stairs. I need to get on my laptop for a bit. Some proposals to review for tomorrow. Sure. She paused at the bottom step and turned, looking at me. I thought I saw a flicker of something. Guilt, anxiety, but it vanished instantly behind the familiar smile I'd loved for 15 years. Are you okay? You seem stressed. Just a long day at the plant, I said. Production variance issues in Building C. Oh, well, don't work too late yourself. She headed upstairs. I listened to her footsteps on the floor above. She'd be in the home office, right next to our bedroom, supposedly working. I wondered if she'd be texting Robert, or maybe video calling him after making sure I was busy downstairs. I pulled out my phone and looked at the dealership evidence one more time. Robert's driver's license. His confident smile. You made a mistake, I thought. You both made a mistake. You took your affair to a public business. You signed official paperwork. You created documentation that could be verified, cross-referenced, and used in legal proceedings. You authenticated your affair. And now, I had evidence that wasn't just suspicion. I had signatures, payment records, government-issued IDs, and official business documentation with verifiable timestamps. In manufacturing, we called this objective quality evidence, the kind of proof that can't be dismissed as interpretation. The next morning, Tuesday, I was up before Christina. I showered, dressed, made my coffee, and packed my lunch, leaving the house at 6:30 a.m. At my desk, before the morning meeting, I did more research. I accessed the company directory and found the organizational chart. Robert and Christina both reported to the same regional sales director. They frequently attended the same team meetings, worked on the same client accounts, and had overlapping territories. This was unusual. Sales divisions typically segment territories to prevent internal competition. Someone in management had intentionally structured their collaboration. I accessed their internal expense reporting system, another forgotten access point. The expense reports were devastating. Business dinners that ran late. Hotel upgrades from standard rooms to premium suites. Rental car charges when company policy preferred rideshares. Christina's submissions had the proper receipts, but the pattern was clear, expensive, intimate, and indulgent. Worse, buried in Robert's expense reports, which followed the same approval chain, were matching patterns, the same restaurants, the same dates, the same client names listed as justification. They were charging their affair to the company. I documented everything, screenshots, printed reports, highlighted entries, adding it all to my growing file. That night, Christina got home at 7:30 p.m., even later than before. Another client? I asked, keeping my tone flat. Yes. And then Thomas wanted to discuss first quarter planning. I'm sorry, I should have texted. It's fine. I made pasta. There's plenty left if you're hungry. I'm good. I ate at the office. She put her bag down, checked her phone, and a small, fleeting smile crossed her face before she quickly went neutral. I'm going to take a quick shower and then work in the office. Sounds good. She went upstairs. I heard the water running. When she came down an hour later for water, she was wearing comfortable clothes. You're still up? She asked. I was on the couch, watching a documentary. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. They're covering lean manufacturing methods. It's pretty interesting. She nodded distractedly. Well, don't stay up too late. You work too hard. Says the woman who's been working until midnight every night this week. I noted. Defensiveness flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by a tired laugh. Sales never sleeps, you know that. After she went back up, I reviewed my evidence files again. I had enough. More than enough. But I wanted the paper trail to be so comprehensive that there would be zero room for negotiation or denial. On Wednesday, I took a long lunch and drove across town to the address on Robert's license. It was a respectable, mid-range apartment complex, the kind of place a newly divorced professional might land. His silver Lexus sedan was parked in space 247. The sight of his car confirmed his reality, grounding the overwhelming documentation in a physical place. I sat in my car in the visitor parking area for a few minutes. I wasn't there to confront him. I was there to verify the final piece of the documented evidence. I drove back to the plant, making it in time for the afternoon production review. That night, Christina got home at 8:30 p.m. Jesus, Christina, you're going to burn yourself out, I said, genuinely concerned for the state of the woman who was about to be my ex-wife. I know. Just 2 more weeks until the quarter closes. She looked exhausted, the professional makeup failing to hide the dark circles. I will figure it out. You always do, she said, giving me the same encouraging smile she'd given me years ago. She went to bed early. I stayed downstairs, giving her time to fall asleep. When I finally went up, she was asleep with her phone charging on the bathroom counter. The knowledge of her deception was a weight I carried with cold, clinical resolve. On Thursday morning, I made the call. I need a divorce lawyer, I told Richard Carson, the attorney I had used years ago for a property contract. I do handle divorce cases, Daniel. I'm sorry to hear this. I can see you today if you have documentation you want to review. I'll be there at 3. I took the rest of the afternoon off. In Richard's downtown office, I laid out my file. Every page, every screenshot, every timeline entry. Richard read through it, making notes. When he finished, he looked up, impressed. This is extraordinarily well documented. Most clients come in here with suspicions. You've built an airtight evidence file. I'm an operations manager. Quality documentation is what I do. It shows. The dealership records are highly valuable. This is your wife signing official paperwork, listing another man as her spouse, partner, and allowing him to pay for her vehicle service. This is objective, documented fact. Can we use this? Absolutely. Illinois is a no-fault state, but this documentation is critical for ensuring a favorable division of assets and protecting you from any frivolous disputes. The expense reports, which point to company policy violations, are also extremely powerful. We agreed on a strategy. Richard would draft the petition seeking a favorable division of assets. I would secure all joint accounts. He would have the papers ready to sign on Monday. That evening, Christina came home early, 7 p.m. She suggested we sit on the back patio for dinner, something we hadn't done in months. She talked about the stress of the quarter's end. I listened, nodding, wondering if she could feel the steel cage closing around her. Her phone buzzed between us. She glanced at it, and a flicker of anticipation crossed her face before she quickly flipped it over. Probably just work stuff. I'll look at it later. I'm here with you right now. After dinner, she curled up next to me on the couch, falling asleep. I put my arm around her. I wondered if she felt guilty or if she had simply compartmentalized her life completely. I stood over her in the doorway when I carried her up to bed, watching her sleep. 15 years of marriage, ending because of a signature on a service form. On Monday, I signed the divorce petition at Richard's office. Once you sign this, there's no going back, he reminded me. My signature was steady, controlled. I understand. Richard explained the rest of the plan. The process server would deliver the papers to Christina's office on Tuesday morning. I should stay with a friend that night. It's better if you're not there for her initial reaction. I drove to my colleague Brian's house. I told Christina I had to stay at the plant overnight for a production test. Tuesday morning, I was at my desk by 7 a.m. The papers were scheduled to be served at 9:30 a.m. At 9:45 a.m., my phone rang. Christina. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello. What the hell is this, Daniel? Her voice was a mixture of panic and raw fury. They just served me with divorce papers at my office in front of everyone. What is this? It's a divorce petition. The papers explain everything. You can't just. This is insane. We need to talk face to face. Has there been some misunderstanding? There is no misunderstanding, Christina. I have the documentation. Your signatures on the dealership records, your lover's credit card receipts, your expense reports showing company policy violations. I have everything. A long, dead silence followed. How long have you known? Does it matter? Please, I'll come home right now. We can work this out. I'm not at home, and there's nothing to work out. You made your choices, Christina. Now you deal with the consequences. Have your lawyer contact mine. All communication goes through them from now on. I hung up. My hands were shaking. The cold facade of the operations manager was cracking, giving way to a turbulent flood of emotion. I put the phone on my desk and took several deep breaths. The phone rang repeatedly. Text messages poured in. Daniel, please. We need to talk. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I put the phone on silent and focused on work, production reports, quality metrics, supplier evaluations. The predictable, logical world of manufacturing was my anchor. At noon, Richard called. Her lawyer just contacted me. Christina wants to negotiate a settlement immediately. That was fast. She is highly motivated. Being served at her office was problematic. Her employer is now aware of the situation, and questions are being raised about her expense reports and her relationship with a coworker. What is she proposing? An extremely favorable settlement for you. She's desperate for this to go away quietly. She's offering you the house with all the equity, 60% of the retirement accounts, and she'll assume full responsibility for her car lease and all her credit card debt. That's more than I expected. She wants to avoid a public legal battle that would air all your documentation. She's also facing potential professional consequences. What about Robert? Her company has strict ethics policies. Termination for both is highly possible. I want this to be over, Richard. If she's offering a fair settlement, let's take it and move on. Understood. I'll draft the agreement. We can likely have this wrapped up in a few weeks. I spent the rest of the week at Brian's, avoiding Christina's attempts to contact me. The following Monday, Richard called. The settlement is finalized. You get the house and the retirement split. The professional investigation is complete. Robert was terminated for expense fraud. Christina was demoted from sales director to a junior account executive, losing her management role and a huge chunk of her compensation. And their relationship? That's not my area, but if I were betting, a relationship built on deceit rarely survives harsh public exposure. I moved back into the house. Christina had already moved out, taking only her personal belongings. The house felt empty, but also strangely clean, as if a source of contamination had finally been removed. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I was promoted to director of operations. I joined a cycling club. I reconnected with old friends. I heard through mutual friends that Christina's professional reputation was ruined, and her relationship with Robert had fizzled out within 2 months of the exposure. Robert was struggling to find a new job. Termination for ethics violations is a permanent black mark. 6 months after the divorce was final, I ran into Christina at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, the polished facade gone. She walked over to me. Daniel, how are you? I'm good. She shifted her basket. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I made terrible choices and hurt you in ways I can never repair. I appreciate you saying that. You were right to divorce me. I wish I had been honest from the beginning. Maybe everything would have been different. But that's not what happened. No, it is not. She wished me well and walked away. I felt no triumph, only a deep sense of closure. A year later, I met Sarah at an industry conference. She was an operations director at a rival company, sharp, funny, and competent. We started by talking about quality control, which quickly led to dinners and weekend trips. Sarah had been through her own divorce and understood the difficulty of trusting again. We took it slowly, building a relationship on transparency and mutual respect. I was promoted again 2 years later, becoming a regional director of operations. Sarah and I moved and bought a house together. We built a life based on open communication. I still took my car to the same Honda dealership. Mike Palmer, the service advisor, was still there. He always greeted me with a knowing nod, but we never spoke about that day. One afternoon, waiting for an oil change, a young couple came in to handle a recall notice. They were debating quietly over whose schedule was more flexible. Mike looked over at me and smiled slightly. I smiled back. Sometimes, the truth is always in the details. The service records don't lie. The documentation of objective fact, a signature on a service order, a credit card payment, reveals more than any confession or confrontation ever could. I drove away that day, reflecting on the journey. Christina's choices had destroyed our marriage, but my choice to proceed methodically, to document everything, had given me the foundation to build something better. In the end, my success, my happiness, and my new life built on honesty was the most profound form of justice. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments.